All right. Well, welcome back. I just turned recording on, and I was about to say this. I'm like, let me record this. This is habit 3. Put first things first. But I think after 2 marathon sessions thus far, okay, I think it's pretty fair to say that this book is worthy of a deep dive. Like this isn't an easy book by any means. It's very difficult. I mean, if you read it and you go through it quickly and then you put it down, oh, that was a really good book. Thank you, Mr. Covey. I mean, there should be change that comes from reading this book. And so today we're kind of finishing the trifecta, if you will, of the private victories. Okay, private victories. Habits 1, 2, and 3, private, internal. Only you see this stuff. The habit of proactivity, that's you. Your values, that's you. Putting first things first is you. Next week is when we get into the public victories. But first, I want to just share. I mean, you guys know what the homework assignment was. It was pretty intense. Your values and clarifying statements. How was that exercise for you? I see some thumbs up. Did you do it within 48 hours like I instructed? You've got 48 hours, right? Mm-hmm. Personal mission statement. How'd you do there? That is hard stuff. And so really that homework assignment there, your personal mission statement, values, this is a lifelong homework assignment. I mean, I'm hoping that like I told you on the last call, every month, the first Sunday of every month, I have a one-on-one with yours truly, and I go through this. And if I need to pivot, add, delete, change, hey, that's okay. Add, delete, change. Are there a few words to maybe make this a little bit better? I mean, so I look at it like it's a living, breathing document. It's a living, breathing document. I mean, so a handful of you sent me your values and mission statement, and I appreciate that. You didn't have to. I said, hey, if you want to run it past me, great. If you don't, no big deal. You guys don't have to turn this in as part of the homework assignment. But a handful of you, Grant Dean, William, Stephen, Savannah. I want to read this one, Stephen Jackson. Here's what Stephen Jackson said. And so I'm still on habit 2. We haven't got to habit 3 yet. Okay. Here's what Stephen Jackson wrote in the body of the email, and then he had the attachment with the values mission statement. And I asked him for permission, and he said, yes, go ahead, Jamie, you can share this. And so he said, I must admit, I haven't been a great example of my values. The direct reflection to my outcome is scary. However, I'm really focused on using this hiatus to ground Stephen Jackson. This is a perfect time. Thanks for running this course. My response to him, and I want to share with you guys, is I think there are so many people in this same boat. The example that I want to use, it's funny, I was on a call today with a couple hundred leaders in the Naguib and Angus orgs, and you know, Juanis knows me. I've worked with Juanis for 20 years. He knows me as a high integrity guy. Okay. Well, it's not like my homies from back home would say, oh yeah, Jaime Hepp, high integrity guy. Now they wouldn't say, I hope they wouldn't say, oh yeah, Jamie's a shady guy. I would hope they wouldn't say that, but I had to make a conscious effort at some point in time that when it came to my values, I want this to be important. Obviously with my actions, it's not quite that important to me now, but I want it to be important and I want to work on this. And that whole habit of being proactive really played out for me to make integrity a part of my fiber. So I think what's really cool as you go through this book, man, if you want to reinvent yourself, if you want to change the direction that your life is going on, you've got the power at any point in time to do that. And it really starts with the values. So again, Stephen, I'm glad you did that, because as you went through the exercise, you're like, hey, I got to admit, as I'm writing these values down, I'm not exemplifying these values. And this is a time to change that, that if these really are the values and I'm going to put this on paper, well, I want to live these out too. I don't want to be a hypocrite. And so I'm with you on that. I'm living proof of that. Again, there's many things in my values that weren't there 20 years ago that are there now. And I think that the habit of just living those daily, they become part of the new fiber of who you really are. All right, so that's that. All right, so let's start off with habit 3 stuff. So years ago, I was lucky enough to go to a John Maxwell seminar. He just finished a book called Today Matters. Have any of you read the book Today Matters by Mr. John C. Maxwell? Okay. Of all the books he's written, and I think he probably he's around 100. My favorite book by far, best John Maxwell book, called Today Matters. I go to the seminar, and at the seminar, and I highly recommend these live seminars. I've been talking about these quite a bit on these calls. You know, go see Tony Robbins, go walk on fire. You have to do it. At some point in time, go do it. Spend the money. Spend the money to go see John Maxwell. But I go to this seminar, it's an all-day seminar. And he says, give me one day. This is how he started off. He says, all I need is one day with you. He says, I want to be at your bedside when you wake up. Okay, you wake up in the morning, I see your eyeballs cracking. I want to write down what you're doing. As you go through the day, I want to follow you around. When you go to work, I want to ride shotgun in your car. I want to just observe. What are you listening to on your way to work? What are you doing? What are your habits? You come home, what are you doing? What are your habits? What are you doing with your time? And I just want to follow you. And then as you lay your head on your pillow, I want to write down, you know, what time is it right now? What are you thinking? What's on your mind? Okay, and done. He says, give me one day and I'll tell you whether you're going to go on to be a huge failure or a huge success in life. And then he said this one line, which I'll never forget: success is found in your daily agenda. Okay? I said this at the beginning of this hiatus. I'm going to repeat it again because I stole a piece of John Maxwell there. I said, none of us are coming out of this thing, quarantining, the same. Some are coming out with new muscles, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. Others are coming out of this thing flabby. Success is found in our daily agendas. The habit of putting first things first is really all about your daily agenda, your calendar. What are you doing with your time? Is it intentional? Is it planned? Is it unplanned? What's going on here? This is a really tough, I'm looking forward to next week, Think Win-Win, because it's, in my mind, easier. This is, just like last week, this is one of the tougher habits here. I've got a ton of material. We got a video we're going to watch together, obviously, but this is an important one to get right. So you're going to hear this in the video. Habit 1, using the computer metaphor. Stephen Covey likes to use the computer metaphor. You are the programmer, habit 1. You have the power to choose. Okay, you are the programmer. Habit 2 says write the program. What's the purpose? Habit 3 says run the program, live the program. He says in the book, right from the book, by living habit 3, this is right out of the book. By living habit 3, you practice effective self-management. Again, a lot of this is going to be, some people like to use the word time management. This is all about priority management here, you guys. All right, so with that said, we're going to hop into the video. If any of you aren't muted, please mute yourself. Okay, I'm kind of going through it, muting people. Okay, there we go. Okay, I'm going to play. We're going to share screen. We're going to watch the video and maybe start preparing your values, have your values by your side, and whatever calendar system you have on that you use, have that on the side as well too. Because those two pieces of weaponry are going to be exercised here today. All right. Share screen.
In a sense, to use the computer metaphor, habit 1 is the awareness you are the programmer. Habit 2 is where you write the program. Habit 3 is where you run it. You execute around it. The third habit is put first things first. I'm going to try to teach an entirely new paradigm in the field of time management. Essentially, it is a paradigm or a way of thinking which focuses on relationships rather than schedules. The traditional paradigm in the field of time management has always dealt with time, scheduling, control, efficiency, doing more things faster. The paradigm is one focused upon efficiency and control. It's called time management. So you manage your time. The clock is the symbol of it. It drives us toward efficiency. Have you ever tried to be efficient with a loved one on a tough issue? Say with your spouse. How did it go? Have you ever tried to be efficient with, say, a difficult teenage situation? How did it go? You see, right off the bat, you and I know how foolish it is. But look at the paradigm that drives it. So what do? When it doesn't work, what do? We try to do it better, more efficiently. We try to be nicer. We try to be more positive. But the underlying paradigm, which is not questioned, of control and efficiency, and that we're right and the other is wrong, turns people into a thing. The paradigm I'm trying to teach today is one of a compass, based upon the sense of focusing upon the first things in our lives. And they are always relationships. The older one becomes, and the wider and deeper the perspective of a person's life is, the more relationships become the supreme thing. And the essence of all effectiveness basically deals with people, with relationships. But these are governed by a moral sense of principles, of what is right and what is wrong, and of integrity around those. I'm asking for sufficient openness and humility to just get into this pair of glasses, this frame of new paradigm, this new map, based upon relationships, not schedules, based upon principles, not values, based upon leadership first, then management, based upon a compass, and then a clock. Let me show you a practical way of doing this. Would everyone write down on your paper, what to you are the first things? What are the first things to you? What are the most supremely important things of your life? Things.
You guys with me still? Can't see anybody. This was the first thing that I did when this whole pandemic thing started. Okay, what are the important things? What are the most important things? What are the first things? Always a good exercise. And we'll get through this, as this thing goes on. But if you guys haven't done this already, write this down. Participate with Mr. Covey here. If you have to write down 5 or 6 things that are the most important things in your life, what are they? So he asked the audience to do this. You guys do the same thing. Just scribble it down. Okay.
Speaking in a generic sense, people, relationships, family, health, integrity. What are the first things? Just list 5 or 6. Now prioritize them. This is the toughest part of the thinking process, the prioritization. What would you say would be number 1? Then number 2. Then 3, 4, 5, and so forth.
I'll let you do that. Kind of like that values deck where you got to, okay, take the 10 now, bring it down to 5, bring it down to 3. So what are the 5 or 6 most important things in the number of 1 through 5 or 6?
If you don't prioritize them, have your spouse prioritize them for you. Now, I want you to answer these 2 questions. I want you to think of one activity that you absolutely know that if you did it superbly well and consistently would produce marvelous results in your personal life. Then do the same thing for your professional or work life. One activity that you absolutely know that if you did it superbly well and consistently would produce marvelous results. In other words, help to secure those first things you've identified. One activity under your personal, one activity under your work or professional life. Okay, now you have all written down what the first things are to you. And you also have written down what is one activity in both your personal and your professional life that you know, if you did it superbly well, that it would have marvelous results. Okay, now let's get into the heart of the application of this paradigm, which focuses upon relationships and principles rather than things, schedules, efficiency, and control. I need a volunteer. How would you like to consider that? Okay. You'd come up here, please. Your name is?
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. Thank you. Good to see you. Elizabeth, you've got, oh, you hold this. Very, very busy life, right?
I do.
You have a work life?
I do.
Family life as well?
Mm-hmm.
Children?
Not yet.
Not yet. What's the nature of your work assignment?
Consulting.
Consulting. Do you have a part of a firm, a consulting firm?
Yes, I do. I direct an international firm.
An international firm. Mm-hmm. So you really are interfacing with all kinds of people in the firm and outside the firm.
That's right.
Do you also do direct work with the clients yourself?
That's right.
And you have a number of associates you work with all around this country and throughout the world? Starting?
Yes.
Kind of like us.
That's right.
You want a rich personal life and a rich family life and also community and so forth. Do you ever feel like you get bogged down in the thick of thin things?
Yes.
Do you ever feel like your life is kind of out of balance, out of whack?
It can be.
Do you ever feel like you're in the pounding surf? Mm-hmm. You know, where you just have one big wave after another knock you down, you stagger back, and then here comes another wave, and another one knocks you down to where it just kind of beats you up? Mm-hmm. Well, that might be analogous to all these little, small things that tend to fill our life. And that just little by little, they just accumulate. Now, your job, you can't go above this, is to get all those large rocks in the jar. Good luck. I'll describe each rocks as she puts them in. What's that one called?
Q2, planning, preparation.
Right. Planning, preparation, prevention, and empowerment. Q2. That which is not urgent but important.
Right. Am I picking these up in any order?
Any way you want. You want to get them all in there because they're all important.
Can I move the little rocks?
Well, you have the little rocks as they are now, but you can't go above this.
Okay. Can I put this down?
Sure. Okay, the next rock she's putting in there is called relationships and family. She's trying to make it so she can get them all in there on the assumption that by moving the other ones around, it makes more space. You didn't look at that third rock you put in there. That's employment, some key employment issue, and then you put major projects here. I can't get it above there.
I haven't worked it yet.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
It's not going to work.
That's called service, community, church. Do you ever feel like this?
Yes.
How many feel like this?
Am I still going?
Yeah, you can. Try to get them in there. You're a hands-on person.
I am. Well. It's not very flat.
She just put down the sharpen the saw. How many frequently do that? I just don't have time today to sharpen the saw. You ever been too busy driving to take time to get gas?
This one's important. So we gotta get it.
Vacation's important to her.
Oh, I know.
By moving the little things around, you might squeeze in one more of those big major things.
Does that count?
It's almost. Wow, that is good. You know, if it doesn't fit, force it.
Do I have to really put all of these in here?
Well, no. You can neglect a big opportunity if you want.
No.
Here's something that's called urgent and important. It's a quadrant one thing that is blindsiding you, that it's your biggest client, that if you don't get back to that client now, you've given up your vacation.
No.
And you have no special block of time just for yourself. You have no young children. I'll tell you what you can do if you want to.
What's that?
you can take a whole different approach. You have a totally fresh bowl. You can work out of a different paradigm altogether. You can do anything you want.
So I can use that bucket. That's what you're saying.
Anything, yeah.
Well, then I'd rather put these in the bottom. And then pour the little pebbles on top. Vacation.
Okay, she has sharpening the saw, planning, preparation, spouse,
Vacation.
employment,
Big opportunity.
big opportunity,
Important and urgent. Block of time. Community. Church. Those young children keep looking at me. Glad my husband's not here. No, I dump these in there.
okay?
I want you guys to kind of have this visual. I mean, I've seen this video years ago, and it's burned in my mind. You think about the enormous amount of pebbles in your life that if you don't do this, the pebbles are the ones that just draw your attention, your focus, your time, your energy. But I love watching these little pebbles roll around the big rocks. I mean, I just want this visualized and burned in your mind.
It's gonna work.
You got all the important things in first, right?
That's right.
That's great. What did you learn?
I learn if I have an opportunity to do all the things that are important first and block out when I have the fullest amount available, and then all the little things will fill in the important things.
Even if this were higher with the green rocks, you may neglect some of those, see?
Mm-hmm.
But so what?
Those are just fillers.
They're fillers, and they're not important. These things you've decided are the most important things. Did you also notice anything else about each of these things? Common characteristic of each of the big rocks. What have they to do with, or who?
With myself.
Self,
Some had to do with others. They all
with others, and
affected
all
others.
had to do with relationships and different roles that you've got. So what if you were to shift to a paradigm of deciding, first of all, what your whole life is about, so that you have a philosophical basis on which to make all of the decisions about what are the big rocks, the middle-sized, small rocks, and so forth. Put the big rocks in very first, the most important things, then the other ones accordingly. And to get out of daily planning altogether, because if you're in the daily planning, what's already happened?
The little rocks are already filling up my day.
Absolutely, and all you're doing now is prioritizing crises. And you have a big rock like this, like a major project, just like you tried to do. There's just no way you can fit that in. So
It's the old paradigm, right? I need to prioritize my schedule. I mean, you'll hear that a lot. You'll hear employees all around America and Canada. I got to prioritize my schedule. And this paradigm shift is, no, you need to schedule your priorities. It's such a slight change, but such a massive difference. That's really what he's talking about. You're not prioritizing your schedule, you are scheduling your priorities. You are planting your big rocks.
So what if you had the philosophy of relationships rather than schedules, and to organize your whole life around relationships, around the roles that you have with yourself and with other people first? Well, that's the whole idea. Thank you very much. Let's hear it for Elizabeth. The key words to understand are importance and urgency. Importance and urgency. Importance basically comes from within you. Importance is your value system, hopefully based upon principles. Importance is your mission, your central strategy to accomplish those high priority goals and plans to implement that strategy. Urgent comes from the environment. It presses upon you. It's proximate. It's right in front of you. It's often very popular. It could be deep into a social value system. You have to decide what is truly important. That's why I asked you. Notice the question, what are the most important things to you? And then, what are the single activities that you know without any question, by doing those consistently, superbly well, would accomplish marvelous results? See, you've identified what's important. We call this a time management matrix.
Now, we studied that this is all in the book. Quadrant 1, okay, important, urgent. Again, you're going to see he's outlined, hey, this green one is different. This green one should be different in your life. These other ones, interesting. Quadrant 1, important and urgent. Quadrant 2, important but not urgent. Quadrant 3, not important but it's urgent. And quadrant 4, not important, not urgent. So quadrant 1 is called the quadrant of crisis. Quadrant 2 is the quadrant of productivity. Productive. I love the name of quadrant 3 because this one has deceived me a lot over the years. It's called the quadrant of deception. You're busy, but you're busy doing a lot of unimportant stuff. I spent a good chunk of my career living in quadrant 3 here. I felt productive, I felt busy. Must be important, but in all reality it wasn't. And this is why my speedometer looked like I'm going 100 miles an hour, but in reality, I'm only going 10. It's because I spent too much time in quadrant 3. And quadrant 4 is called the quadrant of waste. Excessive TV, excessive internet, excessive gaming, a lot of excess. I find a lot of excess.
There are 4 quadrants. Now, quadrant 1, you'll notice, is both urgent and important. It's like that important client that is contacting Elizabeth in her international consulting business. But it's not at a convenient time. But it's a pressing need on the part of that client. Quadrant 1. She needs to attend to it. It's important. It's also urgent. Quadrant 1 is where you tend to move toward crisis, toward problems. If you're not in that meeting, you'll have a problem. So it's a quadrant 1. You have to be in that meeting. So it's either a present problem or a problem in the making if you neglect it. Quadrant 2 is not urgent, but it is important. Prevention, preparation, planning, relationship building, empowerment, sharpening the saw, self-development, setting up mission statements. Quadrant 2 is the leadership quadrant. Quadrant 3 is not important, but it is urgent. Those things that are pressing, sometimes even popular, proximate, right in front of you, but not important. And 4 is neither urgent nor important. That would be symbolized by these small rocks, these green pebbles. All right, now, look at your paper. Look at your answers to those two questions. What quadrant were those answers in? What would you say? One activity that you know would produce marvelous results. Yes, sir. What did you have down? What quadrant? Quadrant 2. Now, why isn't it 1? Because you're not now doing it. It's not urgent. The low urgency need. When we're driven by the urgent, when we are addicted to the urgent, it drives us into what quadrants? 1 and 3. In fact, you examine most executive agendas against the 4 quadrants, and you'll find almost all of them are 1 and 3. 2 is usually called other business. What happens then to 2? It gets pushed aside. 2 represents the big rocks. They're pushed aside. Now what happens to 1? It gets larger. How long can you sustain quadrant 1 lifestyle? Doesn't it soon beat you up? Doesn't it burn you out eventually? How many have felt burned out by quadrant 1? Managing fires, the pounding surf, mending fences. Eventually it takes its toll on your body, on your mind. But then the dilemma is faced. Where do you get time for quadrant 2? When you're inundated by quadrant 1 things that are both important and urgent. You neglect quadrants 3 and 4. You literally say no. 4 isn't difficult. One of the reasons people move to 4 is because they are so beat up by 1. So 4 is essentially wasted anyway.
You guys catching a lot of that? I mean, so you're so beat up in quadrant 1, you maybe escape into quadrant 4. And I can totally relate to that. That's like, oh, geez, okay, some of these things that I just know are wasteful, you're just kind of burned out. So you're drawn to quadrant 4. So an exercise I did, I'll get back to this video, an exercise I did, I want to say in like 2006 is one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Every 6 minutes I had to write down what I was doing. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Every 6 minutes for 2 weeks, 7 days a week. What are you doing with your time? And the facilitator spit out a pie chart when it was all said and done on the time matrix where my time went. Okay. What was interesting is 55% of my waking hours were spent below the line, quadrants 3 and 4. 55%. 45% were quadrants 1 and 2. And you already know which quadrant was giving me the hardest grief. What quadrant was it? It was quadrant 3. I was spending so much time in quadrant 3. It was urgent, it was busy, but it wasn't important. And so again, to Covey's point here, well, listen, if you want to live a life where it's quadrants 1 and 2, I mean, the ideal life is all of your time is spent in quadrants 1 and 2. And no time is spent below the line, quadrants 3 and 4. So think about that. But again, this is me in 2006. I was a consultant. I was already doing, I was well on my way in my career, but I was feeling a little burned out. And funny enough, 55% of my waking hours were below the line. I mean, that's a little intense. That's a little crazy. All right, so we'll get back here. Lost my video. There we go.
Then the key is to take it from 3. Those things.
Sorry, I want to make sure the audio is good. Oh, got it.
That are pressing, sometimes even popular, proximate, right in front of you, but not important. To say no to them. Goethe taught, things which matter most must never be at the mercy of things which matter least. You can do this kind of work, this quadrant 2 work, when there is a burning yes inside you about the mission and the purpose and the value system. You can say no to all kinds of unimportant, however urgent other things may be. People will begin to see you differently. They won't just come and throw quadrant 3 things to you all the time, like I did one time to one of the managers who reported to me. Yeah, it's really urgent, but it was obviously quadrant 3 from his point of view. He said, sure, I'll work on it if you want. Pulled down his project board. I saw all the projects, deadline dates, how far he'd gone. I realized I'm dealing with someone who has purpose and organization here. I'm not going to mess up this person's life and get involved in reordering this system. So I said, well, I'll find somebody else, and I threw it to another crisis manager. Now, what if it's your boss that gives you a quadrant 3 project? By definition, what does that make it? 1. What is important to another person must be as important to you as the other person is to you. That's why most of you put down on your first things first list your relationships with your loved ones, your family. I know you did. I'll bet there's not an exception in this entire room. There's also not an exception in this room that the things you wrote down under the last 2 questions are all quadrant 2. Preparation, prevention, values clarification, planning, relationship building, true recreation or empowerment. Now notice, all of those have to do with relationships, either with self or preparing toward future relationships or the rebuilding of relationships. All 7 habits are in quadrant 2. All 7 of them. Habit 1, to be proactive. You have to be proactive to act on quadrant 2. Why? Quadrants 1 and 3, what? Act on you. So you just react to them. You have to be proactive to act on quadrant 2. Habit 2, begin with the end in mind. Why would that be quadrant 2? It's not urgent to develop a mission statement or a clear sense of what this day, this week, this month, or these goals under each role is, see? Nothing's pressing me to do that. You are proacting the writing of those programs. Habit 3 is where quadrant 2 is taught. Habits 4, 5, and 6 is the process of involving other people in a communication process in moving toward synergistically solving problems. That means come up with solutions that are better. And habit 7, sharpening the saws, the renewal habit, obviously is quadrant 2 activity. Seriously, people that start to think in quadrant 2 ways will gradually change their job, their environment. Now they have to be wise and sensitive, but they're proactive. They're doing things to make things happen. They have become a force of nature. That's quadrant 2 thinking. Let's go through the 6 steps. Step number 1, connect to your mission. In other words, connect to your overall philosophy, your sense of what your life is about, your vision for your life and how you see yourself, the kind of contribution, the kind of character, and the value system, hopefully centered upon principles. You connect to that first. Everything gets connected to that. You see, habit 2, begin with the end in mind, is the habit of personal leadership. It basically means to get a clear sense of what your life is about. Habit 3, you manage according to that leadership, according to that mission statement. That's why the first activity that you do is to connect to your mission. That's where you have the burning yes about what your life is about that gives you the courage to say no to quadrants 3 and 4. Particularly 3, because there's so much social value system driving quadrant 3. And it takes an enormous amount of courage. That's why you always want to review and connect to your mission. The very next step that you go into outlines your whole life around roles, which basically means relationships. Study the roles that you have in your life. Study what you put down. You probably put down the roles having to do with your family, the key roles that you have in your work. You may be a department head, you may be a manager, you may be a technician in a particular engineering department, you may be a member of an executive committee, you may be a CEO, but you also want to think about your social roles, your community roles. Notice that's the second activity. Then you'll notice you set up your goals around each of those roles. Quadrant 2. Quadrant 2. When you set up your roles and goals, you're identifying quadrant 2. Then you organize weekly. Why weekly? Why not daily? If you're into daily, what quadrant are you in? By definition, you're into quadrant 1. Because if you organize on a daily basis, you're dealing with the urgencies. The smallest unit of planning would be a week. And then you have to adapt on a daily basis, even on an hourly basis. On what basis do you adapt? On the basis of integrity. If you have educated your conscience into principles, you will have the inward sense. You'll adapt instantly. Your scheduling is very soft. You're very hard on being principle-centered, but your scheduling is soft. And people know it, and they respect it. And they will respect your time. You exercise integrity in the moment of choice, and then you evaluate. You stand back, reflect. How's it going? Roles, goals, execute around them. I go through the 6 steps. Connect to the mission, review roles, select goals, organize on a weekly basis, use integrity in the moment of choice, evaluate. Organize the whole week within the context of a longer-term plan, within the context of the mission. This is essentially the whole week. I can relax now because I know when I'm going to have my private date with my daughter, Jenny, this week. I know when I'm going to exercise. I know when I'm going to have an opportunity to go with my wife on this little Honda trail cycle that we go on almost every day of our life that I'm home, because I've scheduled it. If something more important comes up, that's fine, but I try to put the big rocks in first. I put the mission statement at the top, and then I just put the different roles. Then your life is balanced. See, most time management approaches teach priority.
Look at that. I would love to have that framed, hanging in my office right there.
That's good. But what about balance? You don't want to prioritize yourself up a ladder of success leaning against the wrong wall. And you don't want to focus on schedules. It's on relationships. So all the roles involve relationships. And it's very personal. First role is the relationship to deity. It's my first and highest priority. Second, family. Third, neighbor in the large sense. I want to contribute in significant ways where there is nothing in it except that kind of service. And I'm sure many of you do. So any church work, any community service, citizenship work, and good causes would be under neighbor. Then chairman of a company, so I'm interested in preparing for our board of directors meeting. So I set down the goal of what kind of preparation so that we can make sure that material is sent out in time for people to prepare. Then I have writer, and then as a role as a friend. The point is, you organize around every role that you have, and you look on them as stewardships.
Okay, are you still with me? All right. Yeah, this is big stuff here. So I'm going to get into a lot of personal stuff as I did with the values, the previous, begin with the end in mind. So I'm going to get pretty raw and detailed with the systems that I've created through this putting first things first. But first question, just as a exercise, you can show me with your fingers, 1, 2, 3, 4, quadrant. Okay. Every Thursday, my family, okay, 3 children, my wife, myself, we watch Lego Masters on Fox every week. It's like a reality show. What quadrant is that time, that 1 hour time slot? I'm looking at different fingers here. Okay. Oh, I see a quadrant 4. I see 2. I see them all. Everybody's got a different one. Okay. The right answer is quadrant 2. It's like, what? You're telling me watching television is quadrant 2? Why is watching TV? You don't have to answer. I'll just kind of answer out loud. I remember listening to Gary years ago because I'm like, oh yeah, I'm cutting TV out of my diet. I'm just the anti quadrant 4 guy, and I'm the anti quadrant 3 guy. And he's like, well, Jamie, my family and I, we watch American Idol together as a family, and it's quadrant 2 time. So I got that idea from him. If it's relationship building time with the family, like again, we're not binge watching anything, but it's a time that the family connects. That is big time a quadrant 2 activity every Thursday watching Lego Masters. I highly recommend it. Season finale is coming up tomorrow. So anyway, I don't know what I'll do with that extra hour of my life that I'm going to lose. Hey, straight from the book. When I went through my notes, I'm like, what were the highlights that I took from my book report when I read this book? 3 points. I'll just read them. You don't have to write these down. These are all in the book. The successful person, this is Stephen Covey, the successful person has the habit of doing the things failures don't like to do. This just jumped off at the page when I read it. The successful person has the habit of doing the things failures don't like to do. They don't like doing them either necessarily. Oh, good, we're in good company. But their disliking is subordinated to the strength of their purpose. That sounds like the field right there. That's the field. People that win the field versus people that lose to the field. I just described the field right here. The successful person has formed the habit of doing the things failures don't like to do. They don't like doing them either necessarily, but their dislike is subordinated to the strength of their purpose. Wow, it's powerful. That subordination requires a purpose, a mission, a habit to clear sense of direction and value, a burning yes, you heard him say that a couple times on that video, inside that makes it possible to say no to other things. It also requires the independent will, the power to do something when you don't want to do it, to be a function of your values rather than a function of your impulse or desire of any given moment. It's the power to act with integrity to your proactive first creation. So, I don't know if any of you have read this. Ben Franklin's autobiography. Okay? Autobiography. What's interesting when you read this book, it's like a big paragraph, like it's interesting when you read what somebody wrote a few hundred years ago. It's not quite Shakespeare, but it's not quite modern English either. But what's interesting is before Ben Franklin died, okay, everybody was encouraging him to be like, hey, Ben, dude, you got to write an autobiography. I mean, how did you do it? Like, the world needs to know that these systems you created can't die with you. You've got to write an autobiography because you just lived a completely significant life. I just want to read to you from Wikipedia. Okay, this is straight out of Wikipedia. Here's the accomplishments of Ben Franklin. He's one of the founding fathers of the United States. He's one of 5 people that drafted the Declaration of Independence. He was also a leading writer, a printer, a businessman, a political philosopher, a politician, a Freemason, a postmaster, a scientist who discovered electricity, an inventor, a humorist, a civic activist, a statesman, and a diplomat. He founded many civic organizations, including the Library Company, Philadelphia's first fire department, and the University of Pennsylvania. I mean, this dude did a ton. On page 66 of this book, it highlights, I mean, you don't have to look too closely. Stephen Covey studied Ben Franklin big time. Started a company called the Franklin Covey. Go to franklincovey.com. Franklin is Ben Franklin. Covey is the dude we just watched. Ben Franklin came up with 13 virtues. 13. With clarifying statements behind each virtue. Right? I'll just read number 5, frugality. Resolve to perform, make no expense, but to do good to others or yourself, waste nothing. And he did the exercise that was asked of you in habit 2. Okay? He did that exercise. Then in his autobiography, he shows you his schedule. He shows you his time, what he did with his time. And again, imagine if you lived in the 1600s in America, you're like, how does this guy kick butt at everything he does? Everything he does, he seems to be winning in. And so really, again, the autobiography of Ben Franklin, this is what Stephen Covey's talking about here. And this is really, I want to show you the pyramid. When I went to my first Franklin Covey class, I've kept this. This is almost 20 years old. The course basically, again, Hoke, Jamie, you got 48 hours to identify your values. The bottom of the base is identifying your values. The very base of the pyramid. Once you have identified who you are and your mission, now you set goals. Personally, I set annual goals. Then you get into your weekly planning. Same time, same place every week. And then you adjust, as Stephen Covey says, you plan daily. This is basically what Ben Franklin did. Your compass. Okay, so have any of you, just a show of hands, have you actually gone through the focus class, putting first things first class, where you had a compass? Or does anybody have an old school Covey planner that you use, pen and paper? Show it to me real quick. All right, a couple of you guys busting out some of these things. Okay, beautiful. So William, I'm gonna unmute you here real quick. So what's that little plastic thing in your right hand?
It's the weekly compass card.
The weekly compass card.
Yep.
And what do you have on your compass card?
I don't know if you could see it, but it starts at the top with sharpen the saw. So physical, social, the mental, spiritual, and then it has the roles and then the big rocks for each role. So you just fill in, I just fill it in weekly what each role is, and then the goals are my big rocks under that specific role.
Yeah.
Beautiful sunset I've ever seen.
Exactly. All we can see is San Francisco, my friend. Great. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, the exercise, let me go back to sharing screen. One of the homework assignments you guys are going to have, again, I'm just going back to, again, when this coronavirus thing hit, I always want to start with, I call it blank canvas. give me a blank canvas. Basically, the time I wake up in the morning, the time I go to bed, I mean, so I'm the kind of guy that can function on 6.5 hours sleep. I like that. I know some want more, some want 8, 9, maybe even 10 hours. And the way I have my brain operate, I start my week on Monday and my week ends on Sunday. I've changed my calendar. I'll show it to you shortly what my digital calendar looks like. But I like looking at this, gives me peace, right? Just looking at this. I've got nothing scheduled. I want a blank canvas. I think sometimes we need to hit a reset button. And again, the coronavirus made us do this. This is my second exercise after I figured out what was important to me. Like what's important during this coronavirus? I listed 5 things. I'll share them shortly. And the second exercise is, okay, blank canvas. Scrap everything, eliminate everything, and let's start on a clean slate. You are going to have a homework assignment on a blank canvas. I think you can still see this. Now here's what I use for my compass, okay? How do I make this bigger? I'm not sure if you guys can see this all right. So I use, hang on, how do I make it bigger? Full screen. So I use notes, okay? I have an iPhone, I use notes. I got a lot of cool stuff going on in my notes deal. But I've got my compass. I don't think you can see it that well. I could be
Are you on a Mac, Jamie?
I'm on a Mac, yeah.
Just like you can magnify it by, what's the word? Do that on the thing.
Zooming in with your 2
Yeah,
fingers,
zoom in with your keypad.
with your
You
mouse
slide
pad.
your fingers apart like that, it'll zoom in on what's on your screen.
We can zoom in as well.
Oh,
I can't.
I can't.
Okay, hang on.
Huh.
Let me try to figure this out. Well, let me just put it to you this way. I'll sort of read it, and whether you want to zoom in or not, I don't know. I'm not sure how to make this bigger. But again, a lot of people use that pen, paper, whatever. Years ago, I switched to digital. The best way I do it, I use my notes icon here, okay? Nice thing about notes is whatever I put on my iPhone shows up on my Mac, shows up on my desktop. So my compass, again, I call this note my compass. I'm using the same thing I got taught in that course. I've got my sharpening the saw right here, right off the bat. Working out 5 times. Social emotional, Zoom relationships, fellow by the name of Cohen in particular. Mental, what am I learning? From a fellow by the name of Mike Fabarez, apologetics. Spiritual, what am I doing? I've got service with Awana. I teach a class. Also into prayer. I've got my roles here as a Christian. What do I want to accomplish this week? Again, this is all part of the weekly planning. What do I want to do as a husband? There's a role as a husband. I have a role as a father. I have a role every week. The question I ask myself, a role as a consultant. Every week, the role as an owner. The role as a family member or friend. Personal growth, business development, and ICL ownership specifics. 9 roles. Okay, I use this compass.
Are those ranked by priority?
Yes. Yes. Then, and I know how to zoom in on Excel. This is easy. I wanted to share with you guys, I'm going to share past tense, I'm going to share current. In 2012, this is my 2012, I call it Jamie schedule. As you can tell, I took my blank slate, Monday through Sunday, and I started planting my big rocks. Oh, somebody by pen do that? That's pretty cool. Started planting my big rocks. I put in here, obviously I had some morning atmosphere stuff. I had some leaders meeting stuff. I had some prep time, some one-on-ones. I had various calls that were scheduled in there. I had a recruiters meeting happening here. I had evening atmosphere. I had some basketball in here. I had workout, team night, date night, put church in here, put some coaching calls in here. And what was interesting is I noticed how much white space I had, how much unscheduled stuff there was. Like, as busy as I was, I noticed I still had lots of free time. Even in my work zone, here I'm at the office. I mean, really, I'm at the office from 7 o'clock in the morning till easily 7 o'clock at night, 5 days per week. And there's still lots of unscheduled stuff happening at the office. Like, look at Friday. Man, I had nothing scheduled Friday. Well, I decided that anything light blue, see all this light blue space? I proactively decided, here's the habit of being proactive. I'm only going to engage in important activities, which I defined, and again, this is just my personal belief. It doesn't have to be everybody's. I'm going to be recruiting, training, preparing, or coaching and developing key people. That's it. If something comes into my face, comes at me, gets my attention, somebody else's quadrant one is pushed onto me. Hey, Jamie, I got something important going on. Well, hang on. Does this have to do with recruiting, training, preparation, or coaching and developing of key people? Well, no. Then take a wild guess what I did with that. I said no. I only did these things. In the white space at home, I decided that I only wanted to do quadrant 2 stuff. I don't want to live in a quadrant 3 world. I don't want to live in a quadrant 4 world. And none of this is crisis stuff. If it was a crisis, it would have been scheduled. Right? There would have been urgency. There would have been time parameters around it. Well, I decided I wanted to define what quadrant 2 meant to me, and that was relationship building, personal and professional, family time, reading. I didn't put reading in my blue space here. No, my blue space was reserved for this. I'm not gonna be at the office reading. Again, this is just my personal belief and my decision. My reading is gonna come in my white time here. Personal growth, planning and preparing, service, and then here's a couple open categories of fun and adventure. Fun and adventure. I created this in 2012. I was inspired to do this. I was lucky enough in 2010 to get to know a fella that you guys may know by the name of Apollo Ono. One of the people I worked with grew up with Apollo Ono, who is participating in the Winter Olympics. We were on a call with Apollo Ono and we asked to see his schedule. I'll never forget seeing his schedule, and I wish I would have got a picture of it. But his schedule looked a lot like what you just saw there that I did. And it was intense how regimented his schedule was. It was so interesting that he was a young guy. I mean, Apollo Ono was a young 20-something-year-old competing in the Olympics. He still scheduled video game time in his calendar. He scheduled it. I need a little break because this is high intense Olympic training. He had little 15-minute windows of just video gaming, hanging out, gaming. Nothing wrong with that. Scheduled it. And like from the time he woke up to the time he went to bed, it was intense. And it was clear as day based on his routine that this dude is going to Vancouver and he's coming back with some medals. Like, you can't have a schedule like that and not win. You just can't. So what was interesting, again, I want to go back to, this little sucker. I can't tell you how many times. I want to give you an example of date night. I get ready to leave the office. It's around 7 o'clock. I get ready to leave the office. And there was always somebody that would say, hey, Jamie, can I talk to you? Hey, Jamie, can I talk to you real quick? And I'd say, well, that depends. Is what you have more important than me spending time with my wife right now? What's interesting, the number of times I've said that, okay? Well, that depends. I mean, listen, if this is really important and this is more important than me spending time with my wife, and as you can tell, I work pretty hard, so I think she wants to see me. If this is more important than that, then no problem. I'll tell my wife I'm going to be late. Not one time did I ever have somebody tell me that the conversation they were going to have with me was more important than the time I was going to spend with my wife. Not once did it happen. In other words, I mean, the way you conduct this, let me open up my calendar for you guys. Oops. Let me get rid of some stuff. Share screen. All right, we're on to Hepp's calendar. What he said, you guys, you see, so I use Google. Big fan of Gmail. So again, I use Google Calendar. And as you saw before, I use Notes. My compass and my calendar. Notice all my Google tasks, which are imported into my calendar. They're all ranked, they're all prioritized. A, here's A's and C's. I got to pay some tax today. That's a C priority. Why is it a C? Well, because the government's given us 3 more months. It's not urgent anymore. So I can actually push this task, which I'm going to do. I'm going to push this task to next Wednesday. Let's see how important it's really going to be for me. Notice I prioritize my A's, my B's, and my C's. Okay, so I've got my priorities here. You can see I've also got this stuff going on. Every day, here's how I'm starting my day off. 2 hours, it's a nice block of time. I sharpen my saw. I go really slow in the morning. I like to wake up early, go slow. Got my physical demands. I've got my spiritual demands. I've got my mental demands on here. Every day, 6 days per week. I've got some morning atmosphere. I've got, again, various things scheduled with this. I'm going to come back to my calendar in a second. I just want to, I got so many notes here. I want to make sure I get this stuff right. Yeah, roles. Let me give you a couple things with roles. We got 2 interesting Gary stories for you guys. It's 2:15 right now. Years ago, this is probably 2003. I got married in 2003. Before I met my wife, I was working out 5 days a week. Okay. Then I met my wife and I stopped working out 5 days per week. I mean, I could give you a million excuses or reasons to why that happened, but I started to gain some weight. And I get a Christmas gift from Mr. Gary Paulson of an exercise bike for Christmas one year. How's that for a hint? Yeah, there's a hint for you. And I used to say to my wife, I'm like, I have the same numbers as Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, Arnold's 6'2", I'm 6'2". At Arnold's peak, he was 230 pounds. I'm 230 pounds. She'd always say, well, Jamie, he was shaped like a V and you're shaped more like a pear now. Like, you know, you're not really the Arnold Schwarzenegger that you claim to be. I'm like, yeah, I get it. Gary sends me an exercise cycle. And at the same time, I also went to my first Franklin Covey class. A couple months later, I lost about 20 pounds. And Gary's like, wow, Jamie, that exercise bike, wow, it's, you know, it was a really good gift. I'm like, actually, I haven't ridden it one time. I said, the difference that's happened is I've made an appointment. I made an event of working out. What I used to do before that, before the Covey class, before studying the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, is I wouldn't have it in my calendar. I just have it as a suggestion. I got to work out today. So then when I'd wake up in the morning and I didn't feel like working out, and I never felt like working out, to this day, I don't feel like working out. But if it's in the calendar, it's going to happen. If I take the time, the relationship I have with my calendar, I own my calendar for 1 hour at the start of every week for 168 hours. I'm the boss, I'm the architect, I write the program. For the remaining 167 hours of the week, the calendar owns me. That's my relationship with the calendar. I own the compass, I'm the architect, and then when I put that into the calendar, it's go time. You guys can already tell what I'm going to do at 4:30 today. I have an appointment with running. I have it 5 days per week. The only time that this is going to get trumped is if something more important comes up. But similar to that, hey, Jamie, can I talk to you? Well, that depends. Is this more important than my time with my wife? If it's on the calendar, I made it important. And if it's not on the calendar, again, I've already proactively decided what my white space is all about. Oh, here comes another marker again. I like that. Yeah, all the white space. Thank you, whoever did that. When the coronavirus thing came, I'm like, hey, my white space, what's important? I came up with 5 things. Personal growth and learning, physical fitness, relationship building, family and business, teaching, and strategizing and planning. Those are my 5 big rocks that all my time is going to be consumed. So if I have something coming up between, you see this little 1 hour gap I have coming up here? I've got nothing planned in that little gap. All I know is whatever activity I'm going to be doing has to fit the category of those 5 things I came up with. Personal growth and learning, or physical fitness, but that one's coming up later, so I can blow that one off. Relationship building, teaching, or strategizing and planning. Same goes with all this wonderful white space here. Oh, same thing goes on Sunday for all this white space here. Same thing goes on Saturday. Years ago, I said to Gary, I had a nice one-on-one with Gary. He's my go-to guy on the Benjamin Franklin, on Stephen Covey. I mean, he embodies this stuff so well. I said, Gary, like I feel like I'm winning with my work. I feel like I'm winning as a father, but I don't feel like I'm winning as a husband. I said, I feel like my wife gets my leftovers. Joanne's like, I don't feel like I'm just kicking butt as a husband. And he sits there and he's thinking, and he looks at me, he says, Jamie, he says, I just want it all. Like I'm thinking maybe he's going to relate to me a little bit, but he's kind of shaking his head like, I can't relate to you. I want it all. Like, why can't you have it all? It's not a compromise thing. I went back to that whole weight loss thing. Well, I'm busy as a newlywed man and I'm busy with business. I don't have time to work out. He says to me, Jamie, that's not a true statement. You do have time to work out. You have 168 hours a week, just like every other human being on the planet. A more correct statement is working out just isn't a priority to me right now. That's a hard pill to swallow because I want to use the excuse of I just don't have time. No, you have the same amount of time. John Maxwell says time management is a false narrative. There's no time management. Nobody can manage time. You can't speed it up or slow it down. Everybody's got the same amount. All you can do is manage your priorities. That's all you can do. So what you're saying is your wife isn't a priority. Like, oh, that's a hard pill to swallow. I remember the coronavirus thing, when it first came out, I had a similar conversation with Joe Nolan. I said, well, I feel like I'm winning on so many levels. I need to do more for Joanne. He gave me the suggestion, and I've plugged it in here now. I've got a morning, I call it coffee talk with Joanne. I've changed it recently to therapy. It's turned into my therapy session with my wife. I'm not sure how all my problems seem to be coming to the surface. I keep telling her I want to talk about your problems, your shortcomings, your dysfunctions, but it's all me somehow. I'm not sure how that's happened, but I like it. I enjoy my coffee talk with my wife. But if I want to make my wife a priority, I have to plug it in. And I would suggest, here's a suggestion I had. I was talking to Ryan Coggerty earlier this week. Where, hey, listen, I want to try to have as much white space as I can. Okay, I'm at a point in my life I want white space. I've got tasks that need to get done. I've got A priorities that need to get done. I just don't like to be stuck on certain times they have to get done. I'll get them done today. I just want to have the flexibility of time. You can only do that. You can only get to that space where you intentionally have the white space once you have a track record of exercise discipline. I don't know if you guys caught that, but once you've got the discipline of like a regimented schedule where your big rocks are planted, and you can exercise that day after day, week after week, and you got Q2 and Q1 stuff peppered through your calendar, I think as you evolve and as you grow, you'll be less restricted to those time slots, and they'll shift from events on the calendar to tasks on the calendar. So in other words, a nice way to put it, I'm going to do this right now. Before the call, okay, as you see this, right? You see the day's pretty busy. Starts at 5:30 and it kind of ends around 6 o'clock. It's almost 12 hours of scheduled stuff. Well, before this exercise, like how different is this going to look? That whole blob is removed. That blob was removed because there was a task right here every day of working out. You see this task of working out? And then after I'd work out today, I don't delete the task. I push the task to tomorrow and it gets done. Tomorrow, after I plan the task of planning, next week's plan, I push the task to next week and the sucker gets done on the 23rd. But again, I can have that A-type habit or that A-type task of working out and not have to make it an event because I've got the discipline and it's going to get done. I'm no longer at the point where, oh, well, I've got the task in there working out, but I don't feel like it today. You know what? I'll just push it off tomorrow and just be the great procrastinator. It took the habit of me doing this of like, no, you know what, Jamie? You need discipline. You need to work out. You need to work out for 90 minutes a day. You're going to make this green. Don't ask me why I make that green. It is repeated. It is every weekday, indefinitely, and you are saving the sucker. Boom. And now it shows up. So in my personal opinion, the difference between an event and a task, and again, they should all be blended in one spot where you've got them all. Again, like I got a C task here on Friday. Zillow and Auto Trader. I got to sell some stuff before I move to Minnesota. Actually, I got to rent a place out and I got to sell my car. I'm selling my Tesla. I'm not taking it with me to Minnesota. I'm going back to being a truck, gas-powered kind of guy. That's how you roll in the state of Minnesota. So I got to do that. Is it really that important? That's a C task. But tasks are things that got to get done, but there's no time frame around it. And if it doesn't get done a C task, man, I can push that stuff to next week, no sweat. An A tasks get done. And again, until you have the habit of discipline, like things just get done. Like it's just, you know, like clockwork. I got to get it done. 4:30, I got an appointment. I look at it like it's like a plane ride Well, if I got a flight leaving at 4:30, I can't show up at 4:35. I got to be there early and the plane leaves on time. So I don't suggest a lot of white space early on. Like my calendar, again, I showed you my 2012 schedule. There wasn't a ton of white space on that schedule. Oops. That's not the one I want. Like, it's busy. That's a busy guy right there. That's a guy who's leaving the house around 6:30 in the morning and coming home around 10 o'clock at night. 3 nights a week. Wow, boy, my wife had to put up with a lot of stuff. I added her and my son in there because I never saw my son during the week. He was only 3 at the time. I didn't mind. I had stuff to do. I had a business to get running here. I was okay to sacrifice for that short period of time. I mean, it was intense, but it was scheduled. Not a lot of white space going on. I mean, it came back to that paradigm of you can pay now and play later, or you can play now and pay later. Good news is either way you're going to play. Bad news is either way you're going to pay. Just understand the latter of the two is going to be exponential. But I've been saying that for years. The latter will be exponential. So if I pay now, if I pay the dues now, while my son is only 3, well, now that my son is 10, I get to coach his Little League baseball team. I don't regret, well, baseball's canceled because of coronavirus, but I was coaching and we had every intent to win. Just, got a little curveball thrown at us. But again, all that scheduled stuff for 14 hours a day, I don't have a lot of regrets. And then you shift into a time in your life where you can schedule less their tasks and you don't necessarily have to turn them into events. I hope that's not too deep for you guys. Only thing I'll say, and then I'll open up for a couple questions, man. We're almost at the 90-minute mark. That's unbelievable. Really, there's 2 big things I got from this habit of putting first things first. 2 big things, 2 big takeaways. One is the key to priority management is saying no. I say no. I say no a lot. I mean, like, look at it this way. I have 3 wonderful little kids downstairs right now. Am I not saying no to them right now because I'm saying yes to you? I mean, you can only say yes to one thing. I've read some statistics that say multitasking is the same as like driving intoxicated. Like, you do a bad job multitasking. So whatever the one thing is that you do that one thing with laser beam focus. The class is called Focus. Okay, Franklin Covey Focus. That's the class. Google it. Franklin Covey Focus. They go to cities all around the country. They charge a few $100. Go to that class. It's well worth it. They say, look at light. Diluted light gives you light where you can kind of work and you can read, again, light. But if you can channel and focus light, you can turn it into a laser, can cut steel. The same light that lets you read can be used to cut steel, for crying out loud. That's the power of focus. So you focus on one thing and one thing only, and you're saying no to everything else. And then when I'm with my kids, I have to say no to everything else. Turn the phone off. You're saying yes to your children right now. Why are you trying to multitask and get stuff done on your phone while you're with your kids? You're diluting the light. You want laser beam focus. Laser beam. So those are the 2 big takeaways over the years of turning this into a habit, is you can only say yes to one thing at a time and make it extremely concentrated. Heavy focus. When I'm in the field, it is ringing the bell mode focus. I got nothing else on my mind. It's funny, even to this day, if I go to the field, my wife knows, leave Jamie alone. He's not going to pick up the phone when you call. He's focused on something. He's not allowing himself to be distracted. I go to the gym. I don't want to be distracted. I say yes to one thing and one thing only. And then the power of no. You say no to everything else. You do that, you'll accomplish quadrant 1 activities, you'll accomplish quadrant 2 activities, and ideally you're not spending any of your time in quadrant 3 or 4. So anyway, that's about 90 minutes. Anybody have any questions? I know there's a lot of stuff going on here. Any quick questions for like 4 minutes? Oh, somebody says, how much you selling Tesla for? I don't know yet. I haven't checked it out. I'll check it out on Friday for Auto Trader. See what it's worth.
What exactly was the homework, Jamie?
Oh yeah, I got to give you a homework assignment.
I'm excited.
Thanks. Thank you,
Welcome.
Mr. Being proactive. Almost let everybody off the hook.
Good attention to detail.
Oh, I love it. Love it. Yeah, the homework schedule for this week. Oh yeah, I should say this too. Because this is so heavy, this book, I'm not going to race through habits 4, 5, 6, and 7 over the next 2 weeks. This coronavirus thing is going into May, as we know. So what's going to happen is I'm going to finish it. It's going to be Wednesday every week, 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for 7 weeks. Okay? So I'm not going to do multiple habits in 1 week. It's too much. Go slow. Let's go slow. Let's just get it right. So we will be on a call again next week, same time. So this week, your homework assignment is you create your locked schedule. Start with your blank canvas. I like using Excel. I like having that, you know, for whatever reason, I've always looked at a calendar like, why do they start it off on Sunday? Because your Saturday, Sunday kind of blend. So I start my week Monday and I end it on Sunday. And as you can tell, even looking at my calendar, I have formatted my calendar that way. It starts on Monday, it ends on Sunday. That's just a Jaime Hepp nerdy little thing that I do. It helps me look at blocks of time a little bit different. You create your lock schedule. I don't care if your week starts on Sunday. I don't care if it starts on Monday. It starts on Thursday. What does the ultimate Apollo Ono schedule look like for you? I did this in 2012, and my career, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, man, so many good things came out of that. 2 more wonderful kids entered the picture. Business, I want to say quadrupled, if not more. Like just things went up and up, but it was a regimented, high disciplined, Apollo Ono world-class training routine and schedule. That is your homework assignment. You create that. I would suggest you share that with people you trust to get their opinion. Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Does this work? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Of course, my wife helped me architect that in 2012. She wanted that little window. Well, we want to come by the office, me and Dane. I'm like, great. You guys come by the office. We'll have a little picnic. Great little distraction on Wednesday. I needed that. Joe Nolan helped me with my little wife coffee talk. So I allow other people to shape my calendar all day long. So don't think that you need to do this on your own. You should involve other people. And for the next call, you must have read Habit 4. Think win-win. Love that habit. Lots of good stuff to talk about with that one. But much less instructive. This type of call, and again, it'll be recorded. You'll get the recording if you want. I mean, again, I know this can be exhausting. This is a marathon. I get it. But it's so important to get the right routine and schedule. Again, I'm going to end this call with how I started the call. John Maxwell. Just give me 1 day. I mean, let me shadow you for 1 day. From the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, and at the end of it, I'll tell you whether you're going to go on to be a huge success or a huge failure, success lies in your daily agenda. He said that. It's so true. I'm asking the leaders in my office on a daily basis. Everybody takes a turn. Can you show us your schedule? Show us the routine. Show us your Apollo Ono like craziness here. And they all take a turn showcasing their calendar. Now, hopefully they have the discipline to do the things that they planted. You can't plant a big rock and then not do it. You got to do it. But you can make a bet looking at their schedule whether they're going to go on to be successful or not with what they do at their time. I already have great indicators of who's going to go on to become an owner and who's not. I've got great indicators with my owners who's going on to become a consultant and who's not. You can make predictions based on what people are doing with their time. People used to say to John Rockefeller in the 1800s, there were people that were predicting he was going to be the wealthiest man in the world before he ever became successful, based on his routine and his schedule. If Rockefeller were alive today, he'd be worth around $350 billion.
Sheesh.
Like, he's by far one of the wealthiest humans ever to have lived. But people were saying this stuff when he was just starting because his schedule was so intense. Ben Franklin, I mean, it's clear when you go to this thing, like, well, yeah, no wonder. Like, no wonder this guy was so successful. As a businessman, as a family man, as a philanthropist, as a politician, I mean, because he didn't waste any time. Again, how humbling was it for me to know that 55% of my waking hours were spent in quadrant 3 or 4? Ugh. That made me sick to my stomach. I don't want to waste time. I'm only going to get older. You know, I don't want to wake up as an old person and wish I would have been able to do this all over again. That's why I keep telling people, take advantage of this coronavirus. You've got a chance to reinvent yourself since you have to pause and stop right now. So who do you want to become? And then start filling in that calendar. Your values drive the calendar. That's what happened to Ben Franklin. The values drove the calendar, and then the calendar drove all the success in all those departments of his life. So anyway, I've been talking for almost 100 minutes now, so I think that's you've had more than enough time with me. Next week we're back on. We're getting into the public victories. Again, think win-win. Man, I'm going to get into some real specifics with our business and leaders that go on to be successful, some leaders that don't, and the different thought processes going on. But this next chapter and the next few with public victories, a lot of this stuff is going to be, it's very much into team development and stuff. You're going to go from habits 1, 2, and 3. You go from being a dependent human to independent. Private victories, dependent to independent. The next 3 habits are independent to now interdependent, to a we. It's a we thing. It's a team thing. How to win with other people. So the next 3 should be fun for us all. So I appreciate you guys being on this. If you guys have any thoughts on how to make this better, feel free to ping me, email me, or find me on social media. And you guys have yourselves a great rest of the week, okay?
All right, thanks, Jamie.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Well, you guys.
Bye.
Bye.